Sometimes the world looks at a woman who walks alone and thinks she's lost, but they don't know she's found something deeper than company. They don't understand that when life chooses you, when destiny taps you on the shoulder, it pulls you away from the noise, away from the crowd, away from the ones who only see your surface but never your soul. A chosen woman ain't lonely. She's being separated. She's being molded. She's being strengthened in silence, in the kind of quiet that would break the average person, but builds her into something unstoppable. Because when you're chosen, you start seeing things they don't see. You start feeling things they can't handle. Suddenly, the same people who once clapped for you start stepping back, not because you changed, but because your spirit outgrew the space they kept you in. And that's the truth nobody tells you. Elevation feels like isolation. Growth looks like distance. Destiny feels like walking through the world with nothing but your heartbeat and your hope. But she keeps walking. She keeps rising. She keeps pushing through the shadows, not looking for a crowd to validate her steps, but trusting the fire inside her to guide every move. A chosen woman doesn't walk alone because she wants to. She walks alone because the path she's on wasn't meant for the many. It was crafted for the rare, the resilient, the ones who carry storms in their blood and light in their scars. And every step she takes alone is a step toward the woman she was born to become. A chosen woman walks alone because she carries a purpose too heavy for the crowd. Most people move through life searching for approval, for applause, for the comfort of being surrounded, but a woman with a calling knows that her path is not built for the ease of company. Her mission, her reason for existing, weighs differently than the ordinary burdens people carry. It's not just a responsibility, it's a weight that demands strength, resilience, and vision. Those who are not prepared for it will falter beside her, and she quickly learns that walking with them would slow her down or dilute her journey. She doesn't walk alone because she wants to feel lonely. She walks alone because the crowd cannot carry her vision, cannot understand the fire that burns inside her, and cannot hold the level of commitment her purpose requires. This weight she bears is not obvious at first glance. It isn't something that can be measured in achievements, wealth, or fame. It's the invisible pressure of knowing that she must stand firm, that her choices will shape not just her life, but the lives of others who will come after her. Every decision she makes is layered with consequence, every step carefully calculated, and every moment of inaction carries a cost she cannot afford. Ordinary companionship, the kind of shallow camaraderie that fills empty hours, becomes a distraction rather than a support. The people around her might love her or admire her, but they cannot understand the depth of her responsibility. They do not feel the relentless pull towards something greater, the undeniable tug toward a destiny that will not wait for hesitation or compromise. She is moving on a plane that most will never step foot on, and that alone is enough to separate her from the crowd. A chosen woman often experiences moments of frustration and loneliness because the world does not automatically recognize the burden she carries. She can feel the distance growing between herself and those who once seemed inseparable. Friends drift, conversations grow shallow, and she realizes that the weight she carries is isolating by nature. But within this isolation, there is clarity. The solitude becomes a lens, sharpening her focus and strengthening her resolve. She learns to trust her instincts, to make decisions without the need for validation, and to step into spaces where she feels fully seen even if others are absent. The heaviness of purpose, the seriousness of her calling, requires her to be disciplined in her thoughts and actions. It requires her to prioritize her energy and guard it fiercely, because distractions are the enemy of growth. Walking alone also teaches her a profound lesson about the nature of relationships and alignment. She begins to understand that companionship is not defined by proximity, but by resonance. Not everyone is meant to walk alongside her, and not every voice deserves her attention. Those who are not willing or able to share the weight of her journey will fall behind. And she has no choice but to move forward. She discovers that her path is not meant to accommodate everyone, and in that realization, she gains freedom. Freedom from societal pressures, freedom from people pleasing, and freedom from the need for constant external validation. She becomes the architect of her own journey, carrying a weight that no one else could bear, and finding peace in knowing that this burden is not a curse, but a privilege. Purpose, when it is real, is heavy. It is relentless. It demands sacrifices that the average heart is not prepared to make. A chosen woman knows this early on, and rather than resist it, she embraces the loneliness that accompanies it. She understands that walking alone is a sign of strength, not weakness, and that carrying her purpose fully requires her to rise above the easy comfort of companionship. She learns that the weight she bears is the exact thing that will allow her to build, to create, and to impact the world in a way that few others can. And in carrying it alone, she discovers an inner power, a kind of resilience and clarity that can only be forged in solitude. Solitude becomes her training ground, sharpening her spirit and elevating her strength. For a chosen woman, being alone is not a punishment or a gap in her life. It is the arena where her true power is forged. While the world surrounds itself with noise, distractions, and constant validation, she finds a different rhythm, one that hums quietly but profoundly within her. In the stillness, she confronts her fears, wrestles with her doubts, and discovers capacities she never knew existed. It is in those moments of silence that she becomes her own teacher, her own motivator, and her own shield. The crowd, the chatter, the opinions of others, none of that can teach her what solitude can. And in understanding this, she begins to see that walking alone is not a deficit, but a deliberate choice to cultivate the kind of resilience that can withstand storms. When she is alone, she is free to look inward without compromise. She examines her intentions, her desires, and her vision with unflinching honesty. There is no one to impress, no one to temper her thoughts, no one to distort her clarity. This self-reflection becomes the forge in which her character is tempered. Each challenge she faces alone, each decision she makes without guidance, and each victory she claims in private strengthens her understanding of herself and the world around her. She learns to trust her own voice, to honor her instincts, and to act decisively even when the path is unclear. Solitude teaches her that strength is not measured by how many people walk beside her, but by how firmly she can stand on her own 2 feet when the weight of life presses down on her shoulders. Being alone also sharpens her focus. The world is full of distractions, temptations, and influences that can dilute purpose. She learns to guard her energy fiercely, to invest it only where it aligns with her mission, and to recognize that not every relationship or interaction is meant to support her growth. In isolation, she can prioritize what matters most without interference. Her vision becomes clearer because it is filtered through intention rather than noise. Every step she takes, every decision she makes becomes deliberate and unshakable. She begins to see that solitude is not emptiness, it is empowerment. It is the quiet force that molds her into someone who cannot be shaken by doubt, criticism, or fleeting distractions. Solitude also teaches her patience and discipline. Growth does not happen overnight, and neither does mastery of the self. When she walks alone, she learns to endure the long stretches of effort with no immediate reward, to trust that her labor is sowing seeds for a future that cannot yet be seen. She learns the value of persistence and the necessity of self-reliance. In the absence of external validation, she discovers the inner wellspring of motivation that drives her forward. She comes to understand that true strength is cultivated in the moments when no one is watching, and that the world will eventually recognize what she has built in the quiet of her own company. Moreover, solitude grants her perspective. Being apart from others allows her to step back and observe her life, her surroundings, and her relationships from a vantage point unclouded by attachment or expectation. She begins to understand which people, opportunities, and circumstances are aligned with her path and which are merely distractions. This clarity allows her to make choices with intention rather than reaction. The world may not always support her choices, but she learns to stand firm because she has trained herself to trust the process, trust her instincts, and trust the timing of her life. In essence, the time she spends walking alone is not wasted. It is the foundation upon which her resilience is built, the crucible that owns her mind and spirit, and the sanctuary where her purpose is clarified. The lessons she learns in solitude are lessons that no teacher companion or mentor can provide fully, she emerges from it sharper, stronger, and more aligned with her destiny. Every step alone becomes a step toward mastery. Every moment of silence, a rehearsal for the power she will eventually wield in the world. And every challenge faced in isolation, a proof that her strength cannot be borrowed. It must be earned and owned. She refuses to shrink herself to fit into rooms that were never built for her destiny. A chosen woman knows her worth, and she understands that trying to conform to expectations, limits, or the comfort zones of others is a betrayal of her own purpose. Society, friends, and even family often attempt to define who she should be, where she should stand, and how she should act. But a woman with a calling cannot allow the narrow vision of others to dictate the broad horizon she's meant to reach. She recognizes that her energy, her talent, and her spirit are too expansive to be contained by spaces that were not designed to hold her. To shrink, to compromise her fire, would be to deny the life she was meant to live. This refusal is not arrogance, it is awareness. It is the conscious decision to honor herself and the destiny that has chosen her, even if it means standing alone in the room while the world waits for her to conform. The pressure to conform is relentless. From a young age, women are told how to behave, how to look, how to speak, and what dreams are acceptable. But a chosen woman quickly learns that her path does not follow these predetermined boundaries. She feels a pull toward greatness, toward influence, toward change, and it cannot be satisfied by ordinary measures or the small spaces others expect her to occupy. Each time she attempts to fit into a mold, it feels unnatural, constrictive, and suffocating. She senses the disconnect between her soul and the limitations imposed by the world, and she knows that to continue bending herself to fit these spaces would be to dilute her essence. Choosing not to shrink is her declaration that her life, her energy, and her mission belong to her and no one else. Refusing to shrink herself also requires courage. It is not easy to stand in a room, fully visible, fully alive, and fully unapologetic, knowing that others may feel threatened, envious, or uncomfortable. The world often reacts harshly to women who refuse to make themselves small, who refuse to step back for the comfort of others. She may be judged, misunderstood, or criticized for asserting her presence, for speaking her truth, or for claiming the space she has earned. Yet a chosen woman understands that the discomfort of others is not her responsibility. She refuses to allow their fear, insecurity, or resistance to dictate her movement. Her commitment to her own path is stronger than her desire for approval, and that strength demands that she remain expansive even when the room feels empty beside her. In refusing to shrink, she also cultivates influence and leadership. People are drawn to those who embody authenticity, power, and self-respect. By refusing to diminish herself, she teaches others what it means to honor their own worth. She becomes a beacon for those who are willing to see greatness, and she sets the standard for integrity, courage, and self-determination. This refusal to conform is not merely personal, it ripples outward, creating a space where others can feel inspired to step into their own light, even if it challenges the structures around them. Her life becomes a testament to the idea that purpose requires presence, and presence requires refusing to make oneself small for the comfort of others. Moreover, this refusal fosters self-awareness and clarity. By choosing not to shrink, she gains insight into who and what aligns with her mission. She learns to surround herself with those who support her growth and challenge her to rise higher, and she recognizes when spaces, relationships, or situations are too small to hold her potential. Walking away from the confines of what is expected is not an act of rebellion for its own sake. It is an act of preservation and intentionality. It ensures that every step she takes, every choice she makes, and every energy she invests is in alignment with her highest vision and her deepest calling. This decision, while difficult, ultimately liberates her. It frees her from the weight of pleasing others, from the limitations of imposed standards, and from the fear of standing out. She discovers that the rooms she refuses to shrink in were never hers to occupy in the first place, and that the spaces that are built for her will expand to welcome her full presence. Her refusal to make herself small is a declaration of sovereignty, an acknowledgement of the power within her, and a commitment to living a life that reflects her truth. Her silence is not weakness. It's the sound of alignment, reflection, and inner power. A chosen woman often walks in quiet, and many mistake that stillness for loneliness or passivity. But in truth, it is a deliberate choice, a form of strength that the world rarely recognizes. She has learned that speaking without purpose dilutes her energy, and that her voice carries the most power when it emerges from a place of clarity and intention. In silence, she listens to herself, to her instincts, and to the subtle whispers of the universe guiding her forward. This quiet is not absence, it is presence, a conscious alignment with her path, her purpose, and the power that resides within her. When she chooses silence, she creates space to observe the world without distortion. She sees the intentions behind words, the motives behind actions, and the truth hidden in the behavior of others. Many people are lost in noise, distracted by the constant chatter of opinions, judgments, and expectations. But she understands that wisdom comes from listening more than speaking. Her silence allows her to absorb information, process experiences, and make decisions with precision rather than reaction. In a society that glorifies constant expression and validation, her restraint becomes a form of rebellion, a demonstration that her inner compass is stronger than the crowd's approval. Silence also serves as a shield. A chosen woman understands the value of protecting her energy and her vulnerability. Speaking carelessly, revealing too much too soon, or attempting to justify herself to those who do not understand her purpose can weaken the momentum of her journey. By remaining silent in moments when others would rush to react, she maintains control over her narrative, her boundaries, and her emotional state. Her quietness is a fortress that guards her dreams, her focus, and her inner fire. It communicates strength without aggression, wisdom without arrogance, and power without the need for constant acknowledgement. In the stillness of her own presence, she engages in self-reflection. She examines her choices, evaluates her progress, and learns from her missteps. Silence gives her the opportunity to confront her fears and doubts without distraction, to confront the shadows within herself, and to emerge more aligned with her purpose. This reflective practice nurtures emotional intelligence, patience, and self-mastery. She realizes that the loudest voices in the room are not always the strongest, and that power grows quietly in the soil of introspection. Each moment of silence becomes a rehearsal for the wisdom, courage, and clarity she will display when action is required. Her silence is also a statement of independence. By not relying on external approval or constant conversation to validate her worth, she demonstrates that her strength comes from within. She does not need to explain herself, justify her choices, or perform for anyone else's understanding. This autonomy sets her apart from the ordinary, and while it may confuse or intimidate others, it also signals that she is walking in alignment with her destiny. The people who matter, those who resonate with her truth, will recognize and respect her strength, while those who cannot will drift away without needing confrontation. Furthermore, silence becomes a tool of influence. When she speaks, her words carry weight because they are rooted in intention, experience, and insight. People listen not because she demands attention, but because her energy and her quiet authority demand recognition. Her silence amplifies her voice, making her presence felt even when she is not actively engaged in dialogue. She demonstrates that influence is not a function of volume or constant visibility, but of consistency, authenticity, and alignment with purpose. Ultimately, the quiet she embraces allows her to connect with herself in a way that nothing else can. It creates a sanctuary where she can recalibrate, regain strength, and prepare for the challenges ahead. The world may misunderstand her stillness, but she understands its significance. Her silence is not a void, it is a declaration of power, a reflection of alignment, and a reminder that true strength often speaks the loudest when it is heard only in the heart. People leave her not because she is unworthy, but because they cannot match her growth. A chosen woman moves forward in life carrying a vision, a purpose, and a fire that is rare, and not everyone is equipped to walk beside her. Relationships, friendships, and connections are tested when someone steps into their full potential, and it is common for people who were once close to feel left behind or overwhelmed by the pace at which she evolves. This is not a reflection of her value or her love. It is a reflection of the space she occupies in the world, a space that is expanding beyond what others are capable of comprehending or holding. Growth often separates, and she comes to understand that those who drift away are not enemies. They are simply not meant to journey on the same level of commitment, vision, and self-awareness that she now embodies. She has learned that trying to force people to stay aligned with her path is a betrayal of both her purpose and theirs. When she continues to rise, to evolve, and to stretch toward her destiny, the energy required to maintain misaligned relationships can become toxic. People who cannot embrace her growth may project doubt, jealousy, or criticism intentionally or unintentionally, and she recognizes that staying tethered to them would slow her momentum and cloud her focus. It is not indifference that guides her actions, it is discernment. She understands that allowing people to step away peacefully preserves the integrity of her journey while giving them space to navigate their own path. However different it may be, her growth is not accidental, it is intentional, cultivated, and earned. Each decision she makes, each habit she develops, and each step she takes toward her purpose shapes a version of herself that is increasingly unrecognizable to those who knew her in earlier seasons. The woman she was yesterday may have fit into certain expectations, conformed to certain patterns, or been comfortable in environments that are no longer sufficient for her evolution. Today, she embodies a higher standard of self-awareness, discipline, and courage, and those who cannot align with this higher vibration often naturally fall away. Their departure is not a failure on her part. It is the natural consequence of living authentically and rising into her full potential. There is also a sense of liberation in this process. When people leave because they cannot match her growth, she experiences the freedom to curate her life intentionally. She learns to surround herself with individuals who resonate with her energy, who encourage her vision, and who challenge her to rise higher without diminishing her light. The absence of those who cannot keep up creates space for alignment, collaboration, and connection with those who are capable of walking beside her on equal footing. She discovers that growth often requires pruning, removing relationships that no longer serve mutual elevation to create space for the connections that truly matter. Additionally, she recognizes the subtle lessons embedded in these departures. Every person who steps away teaches her about boundaries, priorities, and the necessity of self-respect. She begins to see that her energy is finite and precious, and she cannot afford to expend it on people or circumstances that hinder her evolution. She learns that love, respect, and loyalty are powerful, but they must be reciprocal to sustain a balanced and purposeful life. Those who cannot match her growth are not enemies. They are mirrors reflecting the areas where she must stand firm, choose herself, and continue her ascent regardless of their absence. This understanding transforms her perspective on solitude and companionship. Walking alone is no longer a sign of rejection or failure. It becomes a natural consequence of her rising. She embraces the fact that the people who remain in her life are there by choice and alignment, and that this alignment strengthens her resolve and sharpens her focus. The departures she experiences are not losses. They are validations that her growth is authentic, that her purpose is unfolding, and that she is moving toward a life designed for her fullest expression. Walking alone teaches her to trust her instincts, her voice, and her own fire. A chosen woman learns early that the world is full of opinions, distractions, and influences that can cloud judgment. But when she walks alone, she is forced to rely on her inner compass. There is no safety net, no external validation, and no one to echo her choices back to her. In that solitude, she discovers the power of her own discernment, the sharpness of her intuition, and the clarity that comes from listening to herself above all else. Trusting her instincts becomes not just a skill, but a necessity, because the path she walks is uncharted and filled with challenges that cannot be solved by conforming to the ideas or expectations of others. Her instincts become her guide, her voice becomes her ally, and her fire becomes the light that illuminates the way forward. She learns that self-trust is built in moments of decision, especially when no one is watching. Every choice she makes alone reinforces the confidence that she can navigate life without leaning on the approval or direction of someone else. She begins to recognize the subtle cues her body, mind, and spirit provide, honing the ability to discern truth from illusion, opportunity from distraction, and alignment from compromise. These lessons are not taught in classrooms or given in advice from well-meaning friends. They are earned through experience, through stepping into the unknown, and through acting despite fear, uncertainty, or doubt. Walking alone teaches her that the voice she carries within is not just important, it is indispensable. Her voice, once tentative in the presence of others, grows strong and unwavering, speaking without fear, articulating her truth, and asserting her boundaries are skills that are cultivated when she must rely on herself. She realizes that silence or compliance in the past often came from a lack of trust in her own judgment, but solitude strips away those illusions. When she must make decisions without external input, she learns to honor her own perspective and speak with authority. Her voice becomes a reflection of her integrity and her self-respect, a signal to the world that she will no longer compromise her values for acceptance or convenience. Trusting her fire, the passion, purpose, and drive that fuels her becomes equally vital. Walking alone allows her to fully embrace the intensity of her own energy without dilution or interference. She learns that her fire is not something to hide, temper, or adjust to fit the comfort of others. It is a force meant to propel her forward, to ignite change, and to leave a mark that cannot be ignored. She comes to understand that the strength of her fire is measured not by external recognition, but by her willingness to act on it consistently, boldly, and unapologetically. Solitude teaches her that living in alignment with her own fire requires courage, patience, and deep trust in the timing of her life. There is also a deeper layer of empowerment that emerges from walking alone. The understanding that she is her own anchor. She learns to stand firm in storms, to navigate uncertainty with confidence, and to embrace challenges as opportunities for growth. Every step taken without support reinforces the belief that she possesses everything she needs within herself to thrive. This trust is not a form of isolation born from fear or bitterness. It is a conscious choice to cultivate independence, resilience, and self-reliance. She becomes proof that one does not need constant companionship or validation to succeed. Strength emerges from within. Ultimately, walking alone shapes her into someone unshakable. She trusts her instincts without hesitation, speaks her truth without apology, and follows her fire without compromise. Each solitary step becomes a lesson in self-sufficiency. Each moment of quiet reflection strengthens her judgment, and each challenge faced alone fortifies her resolve. In learning to depend on no one but herself, she discovers the extraordinary power of autonomy, the clarity of authentic decision-making, and the unstoppable momentum that comes from trusting the voice that has always been there, guiding her toward her purpose. Her journey may be lonely, but it prepares her to rise, lead, and shine beyond ordinary limits. A chosen woman understands that solitude is not a punishment. It is a preparation. While others walk through life seeking validation, companionship, or shortcuts, she walks alone because she recognizes that the challenges, the quiet moments, and the isolation are molding her into someone extraordinary. Every step she takes without support is a lesson in resilience. Every obstacle she faces alone is a test of her courage, and every victory she claims in silence builds a foundation that cannot be shaken. Loneliness, in her case, is not emptiness. It is the forge where her character, I believe, wisdom and power are tempered for the impact she is destined to make. She comes to see that most people are unprepared for the intensity of her journey. They want the benefits of her light without accepting the gravity of her growth. They want friendship without challenge, recognition without accountability, and presence without effort. But a chosen woman cannot slow down, dilute herself, or compromise her standards to fit the comfort of others. Her journey demands endurance, discipline, and a relentless commitment to self-mastery. And in embracing that, she discovers that the isolation she experiences is not an obstacle, but a necessary space for reflection, alignment, and sharpening of her purpose. It is within these moments of solitude that she cultivates the clarity, strength, and focus that will allow her to rise above mediocrity and achieve what most cannot even imagine. Being alone also teaches her the art of leadership. Leadership is not about position, popularity, or followers. It is about self-mastery, vision, and the ability to carry responsibility with courage and integrity. When she walks alone, she practices these qualities daily. She makes decisions without counsel, takes risks without reassurance, and trusts her own judgment when the stakes are high. Each solitary choice refines her ability to lead not just herself, but eventually others who will align with her vision. In the quiet, she learns to manage her energy, to anticipate challenges, and to act decisively, all qualities that mark someone destined to influence the world around them. Her solitude is a training ground for the kind of leadership that commands respect and inspires loyalty because it is rooted in authenticity and experience rather than performance or pretense. Her ability to shine beyond ordinary limits is directly tied to the lessons learned in isolation. When no one is watching, she cultivates discipline, patience, and resilience. When the world offers no applause, she celebrates her own progress, understanding that the internal satisfaction of growth is far more valuable than external validation. These experiences instill a confidence that cannot be shaken by criticism or envy, a clarity that cannot be confused by chaos, and a power that cannot be diminished by doubt. She comes to realize that true influence and success are not dependent on the presence of others, but on the mastery of oneself. Her light, honed in solitude, becomes brighter because it is untouched by the shadows of distraction, comparison, or compromise. In walking alone, she also learns the value of discernment and alignment. She recognizes that not every connection, opportunity, or environment is meant to support her growth. By moving independently, she gains the freedom to choose what serves her highest purpose and release what does not. She becomes selective, intentional, and precise, understanding that the quality of her surroundings, relationships, and experiences determines the trajectory of her journey. Her solitude teaches her to trust herself enough to make these decisions without fear, knowing that each choice is shaping the life she is destined to live. Ultimately, her lonely journey equips her with tools that cannot be taught, lessons that cannot be handed down, and strength that cannot be borrowed. Every quiet moment, every challenge faced alone, and every decision made without guidance adds layers to her resilience, wisdom, and influence. The world may not understand why she walks alone, but she understands that this isolation is preparing her to rise higher, lead with purpose, and shine brighter than anyone could anticipate. In embracing the solitude of her path, she becomes unstoppable, not because she seeks recognition, but because she has mastered the power of self-reliance, clarity, and unwavering commitment to her destiny.